My name is Tiffany Walden. I'm the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the TRiiBE. I'm here with the Mayor Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. Good evening. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's a nice day.
It really is,
Yeah.
right? Especially for the end of February as we culminate Black History Month. So yeah.
What are you carrying with you today? What's on your heart? Spiritually, emotionally, just to kick things off. What are you carrying with you today?
I'm carrying with me today just the hopes and aspirations, honestly, of our ancestors. Today I spent a lot of time thinking about Mayor here at Washington and his corporate counsel, James Montgomery, who's still alive today, the first Black corporate counsel in the history of Chicago. And as we prepare to go into this next political season around our values, I'm thinking about two incredible, courageous Black men who understood their assignment. And James Montgomery was also the legal counsel for the Black Panther Party. I don't believe he's been properly recognized and honored in this city, but I'm going to do something about that.
Yeah, just you saying his name is educating all of us because I hadn't, learned about him. So I learned about him when you talked about him last week on WVON.
Well, that's encouraging. Now I feel like an effective social studies teacher.
Yeah. You've also been outside too, spreading your message. I know you were in East Garfield Park earlier this week for your Faith in Government tour. And those are my stomping grounds. I grew up around there. Even last night, I was just driving through Douglas Park and I saw your name on the light post, Mayor Brandon Johnson, when I was passing the Safe Haven, and I saw the Grace Manor Apartments construction site. What are you hearing when you're outside? What are you seeing when you're outside talking to, Black people?
We're obviously at a crossroad, and, I'm inspired by the tenacity and the energy in this city. What I hear people wanting more, right? They want more, and rightfully so. To me, if I wasn't hearing anything, then I could draw a conclusion that perhaps people have given up on what's possible in this city. It's like being in a relationship. It's when my wife is not talking to me when I'm probably have hit a new low, right? Having some noise means that there's some activity. Having some friction means that there's an opportunity for a spark. And that is really the essence of our existence. We're not just making noise to soothe ourselves or for the sake of just hearing ourselves. We're making a noise to constantly remind us of the need for change and transformation. And they ask me about everything.
I was going to say, what's some of the things that they ask you about?
I mean, anything from, an opportunity for their child, whether it's an opportunity for them to participate in a program, or it's an up-and-coming entrepreneur who wants to open up and establish a business in the city of Chicago, and they want to know the process. Or it's a large corporation that, wants to figure out how to grow their footprint in the city of Chicago. And then there's just, quite frankly, sometimes the older Black woman who whispers in my ear and says, I'm praying for you. No matter what people are saying, there are a lot of folks out here who believe in you and support you. And then there's some people who just come up and just say thank you because how government has shown up for them. So there's a range, right, of expectations. It's a range of aspirations. There's a range of a level of anxiety and some level of trepidation and even confusion. Something that I do hear more frequent than I want to is, Mayor, I just didn't know. So when they find out about what's available or what we've been up to, the shock and it's almost like when I express to them the type of work that we've been doing, as well as the opposition that we've experienced, they are to some extent relieved, but yet somehow dismayed. Because one thing that I know about our people is we don't ever want to be lied to.
I know that at the East Garfield Park gathering that you had at the church for your Faith and Government tour, we wrote about some folks saying like they were shocked to hear some of the things that you were talking about. So I would love to get into that. Like, what are your commitments to Black Chicagoans? What are some of the things that you all have done so far that people may or may not have heard about?
So one of the first things that I did was, it's not enough to win the power, you have to protect the power. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I did for our people was made sure that I put key Black people mm-hmm. in position of power to protect it. Now, I'll be honest with you here, my wife hates when I speak like this. Mm-hmm. However, if anything were to ever happen to me, and God forbid, I have placed our people in key position to make it almost impossible for them to do to us what they did 40 years ago. That's why it was important to have the first Black vice mayor in the history of Chicago.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett. We made sure that where the power moves in city council, that our people were chairs of those committees. So that's finance, that was budget, the rules committee. We also chair zoning. So all your major committees where if you want to get anything done in the city of Chicago, you have to come through the lens and the experience of Black political leadership. And then we took it one step further. We put key people in position in my office. So whether it was the budget director, a Black woman, my senior advisor, chief operations officer, our deputy mayor for economic and neighborhood development, for infrastructure, Black, community safety, Black. I can go on and on.
Yeah, Blackest administration is what we wrote last year.
It is, and thank you for covering that. So with that, where I'm also proud is that one thing that I know for sure, Black people, we love our young people. We do. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable, but ensuring that we have now a 45% increase in youth employment since mm-hmm. I've taken office, mm-hmm. right? So the vast majority of young people who receive jobs, W-2s, are in our communities. In fact, the top 10 neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. The top neighborhood is Austin neighborhood. Yes. 1,672 children receive jobs in the Austin neighborhood, right? The second thing that was important was behavior and mental health. Mm-hmm. So when Mayor Washington was around 19 mental health facilities, mm-hmm. and we were down to 5 when I got elected.
They were intentionally closed.
Intentionally closed, thank mm-hmm. you. They were intentionally closed, depriving our people of valuable public accommodation. Mm-hmm. And so in my first budget made a commitment to opening up 3. So we have Roseland, Garfield Park, and the Lower West Side, the Pilsen Clinic. And so these are 3 behavior and mental health services that are available to our people. We expanded the CARE program, crisis mm-hmm. assistance, response, engagement program. So when people are having mental health crises, a behavioral health counselor shows up, professional, and not a police officer. Mm-hmm. And then here's the other big one, building homes. So last year in our Department of Planning Development, we committed $11 billion to build more units, 9,600 essentially through just last year's investment, 37,000 jobs associated there. If anyone is ever in doubt of my impetus, of why I'm mayor of the city of Chicago, what motivates me, they should not be. My main goal is to repopulate the city of Chicago with working mm-hmm. people, particularly folks who have been on the margins for a very long time. We've only mm-hmm. lost one particular group in the city of Chicago, and that's Black people. And so we built 4,000 affordable units, making sure we're concentrating them in our communities, while we're also ensuring that the people who actually do the development look like us. So we have this incredible project called the Missy Middle, where developers purchase multiple lots mm-hmm. so that we can build at scale. This first infusion of our $1.25 billion investment for the West and South Sides to build more homes as well as to create economic opportunities. The first set of developers, of the 6, 5 of them are Black, 2 women. Mm-hmm. I'm serious about this.
And it's taking place in North Lawndale too, right?
So North Lawndale, thank mm-hmm. you for raising that, right? Because the most famous West Sider, not me, but Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. yes. came to the West Side to highlight the freedom movement around housing. And so the very place in which Dr. King ignited the effort of the freedom movement in the North, we are now moving in a very expedited way to build more homes in North Lawndale, the second place in Inglewood, concentrating our development in our communities. Now here's the thing, it does require a level of patience. And I know our people are eager. are eager. They want to see some of the immediacy around these investments, but our pain is so deep and so severe. In order for these investments to outlast and outlive me, we have to go deep and wide. And so I'm grateful that I've had these 20 months of $20 billion of new investments, $20 billion of new investments, particularly for our people.
One of the last things you mentioned is like affordable housing. And a lot of times when there is a lot of major development happening in an area, people do tend to get priced out, or they tend to get displaced. And I grew up on the west side. Like when I was younger, my grandma and them always said at some point they're gonna come further and further west. And I didn't know who they were. It was a boogeyman that was coming further and further west, but it was always a fear that at some point when they discover the west side, they're gonna push all us out. Can you talk about that, even with like the United Center's 1901 project? Like, how do you make sure that the people who are still in the area, because there's Black people still just a little bit west of the United Center, like how do you make sure people are able to stay when these developments happen, or when people start paying attention to certain parts of the city that they didn't before?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a concern that is, it's a concern that is, we're right to have that concern. One of the reasons why I've emphasized affordability so much and working with Black developers is to ensure that we develop without displacing people. So let's look at the 1901 project. That's a $7 billion conservative, $7 billion investment for the west side of Chicago. Now, the group has already committed to building 20% affordable homes. We're gonna go further than that though. And the vice mayor and I, because this is 27th Ward, we've had conversations about pushing the affordability benchmark to go beyond the minimum, right? And that is something that I am committed to doing. Look, when my wife and I purchased our home in Austin, our home was $150,000. And we needed 2 government programs to help us purchase that home. And there are 6 degrees between the 2 of us. At the time we purchased the home, I was teaching. My wife was working for the city of Chicago. And we had a combined income of about $70,000, $80,000. We were the richest people in our families. The fact that my wife stayed with me and I was making $45,000 a year is a testament to her love for me, right?
That's Black love.
That's real Black love, right? I'll make sure all your dreams are fulfilled on this teacher salary. I got you, baby. And I know that challenge and that struggle to come up with down payment. And I know other Black families can attest, when we are in a position to purchase a home, we need a little bit of everybody. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Just to make sure that the mortgage company, the bank, that they can see that there's a viable
Don't have a
candidate.
student loan, you can't get anything.
You understand what I'm saying, right? And so I'm very sensitive and aware of that. And that's why, along with the development, we have down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. We're building more affordable rental units too.
I was going to bring up rent because a lot of millennials, we can't afford to buy at homes or anything at this point. So what about people who are still renting? Because rent is high too.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things about Chicago, though, I just want to name, though, of the other larger cities, we are still the most affordable city to live in. The average price of a home in New York is $1.1 million. The average price of a home in Los Angeles is about $800,000. And that's for a 900 square foot home, right? And so we have this initiative that's coming out, and we have work to do to get it passed, is the green social housing, which will create a very similar apparatus around what essentially was public housing, but it's a non-for-profit that essentially will be in partnership with the government that would hold the rights of these units that will ultimately pay for themselves in terms of a revolving loan that will be attached to this initiative. And so I'm very cognizant of building units, building affordable units, building more affordable rental units. But the key to all of this is the way we drive the price down, you have to build more units. Right now, because there's such a great demand and the inventory is not as great, it then gives more what's influence to the market, right? To capitalize on the smaller inventory. And so the key to affordability in the city of Chicago is to is to increase the actual product. And those are ways in which we will drive rent down, but also make it ultimately more affordable to purchase a home as well.
And Mayor, before we move to the next, topic, I do want to bring up the $830 million bond deal that you just celebrated a win with that. Can you unpack a little bit about, what that deal is about? Because some people, opponents are saying it's going to hurt us down the line, similarly to how, the parking meter deal and all of those things hurt us down the line. But then you have proponents saying that we need this right now. We need our streets fixed. We need our city fixed right now. And I know Alderwoman Pat Dow wrote about it recently. So can you talk a little bit about like what the bond deal is and how it impacts Black people?
I can, but I want to name something quickly. I'm glad you mentioned Chairwoman Dow, the first Black woman to serve in this position as chair of the Finance Committee. And not that you all need me to, blow smoke, because you do incredible work, but I've never seen the type of attack against a Black woman's leadership in this particular capacity like we've seen during this particular deal. The corporate media printed 4, 5, 6 oppositional pieces to this particular ordinance before they even gave voice to our sister. And I just hope that, not just for this interview, but I hope that your viewers, your readers, subscribers understand the value of Black media. Because it was very clear that there was a concerted effort to undermine what was essentially a routine measure, right? Our financial challenges in this city are directly related to those who controlled our city before. They used our pension dollars to line the pockets in the interests of corporations. Our debt and our debt services are related to the unfunded obligation to retirees who, by the way, we think about public employees are overwhelmingly women, Black women in particular. So when the President of the United States of America is more interested in releasing the January 6ers who attacked our democracy in our country and freeing them up, but putting our Black women in peril, economic peril, by laying off federal employees is a direct attack. And so that's not a new playbook in Chicago. And so essentially what the issuance of this bond was for the infrastructure needs that we have. I was at a public forum a few weeks ago, a month ago, and a Black woman said, Mayor Johnson, you either fix these streets or you're gonna fix my car. And so this $830 million is an investment in our streets, and our viaducts and bridges that we have to repair, our lighting. This is all related to public safety. If we don't invest, there's more damage that awaits us if we don't invest in our infrastructure. I would much rather have to repair, right, and strengthen a bridge than have to build a new one because it collapsed, right? And so that's all this bond does. The return on this investment is tremendous because it also puts people to work. And so it's going to increase more income tax being generated because you're going to actually put people to work to actually fulfill these projects.
And Mayor, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I do want to talk a little bit about misunderstandings. Are there any misunderstandings about what today's mayoral power is, like what people expect a mayor's role to be compared to previous administrations like former mayors Rahm Emanuel, the Daley's, or even when Harold Washington was mayor? What are some of the biggest differences in what the mayor has control over today compared to in the past?
Well, the office of the mayor has tremendous power to improve the quality of life for people, hands down. Whether it's through our transportation system, our education system, our parks, libraries, schools, I have access and the ability to move a number of measures to help transform people's lives. The difference in this particular moment is that those who used to have the power recognize that I know that the power exists, and they are working hard to create chaos in order to distract our people.
Is this the establishment or is this?
This is the old guard. It's the old machine. I mean, if you just, and I don't even have to name names, just look at the people, elected and non-elected, who oppose me. If you just go through that list, look at the folks who believe, whether they're doing their job or not, that they can do mine. It's not that they believe they can do my job, because they can't. What they are, what they know is that the power structure that has controlled this seat for decades, that's who would run this position. In other words, the Elon Musks of Chicago want the seat back, even if their name is not attached to it. They'll put somebody here who will do their bidding. If there was ever an example, and I say this with all due humility, if there was ever an example of a liberated black man, it's me as mayor of Chicago. The very power structure, the interests of corporations that have controlled this city and have run it into the ground, they didn't help me get here.
I was going to say that, you weren't like handpicked by the traditional Democrats or people who, we know to be the established Democrats of Chicago. And I wanted to ask you, how does your administration do things differently? What makes your administration, I've heard you say anti-establishment.
Yeah. How about I'll give you an example? So there's been a lot of discussion over the years around TIF dollars and TIF surplus, right? And as an organizer, I would push previous administrations to release more TIF dollars, particularly the surplus, back into the taxing bodies. And every administration would come up with some ridiculous, raggedy excuse of why they couldn't. And there was one thing that I wanted to be able to prove, was that the TIF surplus for our schools, including our community colleges, which, by the way, let me put a pin here for a second. Our community colleges, the fastest growing community college system in America. The number one subgroup that's registering in community colleges in Chicago are young black men.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just want to lift that up, and I'm working with Alderman Burnett right now to expand a West Side campus through Malcolm X. And the campus,
one on Madison, like that?
Yes,
okay.
We want to actually dedicate an entire campus just to the trades, to put our people in a position to receive all of the proper training so that they can participate in the billions of dollars that we have brought in. But going back to this other point with TIF dollars, when I had the opportunity to declare a surplus to our public schools, to our community colleges, to our parks, I released the largest TIF surplus in the history of Chicago back to the taxing bodies. If there is a lever to pull that releases dollars into our communities, I'm going to pull that lever. That's the difference between me and other administrations. Other administrations were not just stingy, they were irresponsible with the tax dollars. And the individuals who have been placed at the margins, they created living conditions that were horrific and then blamed our people for the conditions in which they created that we were living in. And all I've simply said was that if we're going to do right by people, we have to respond to the most vulnerable people in the city of Chicago. That is just not my political response. That's my moral response to our people, to ensure that Matthew 6:21, where your heart is, there your treasure will be also.
Right.
And so that's why when we're investing in youth employment, we're investing in mental and behavioral health, we're investing in housing. That's where my heart is. My heart is with the people. And what has upset me the most in this position is that the story of how we were investing in our community, there was a concerted effort by mass media to withhold that information to our people. And so that's why I'm grateful for this opportunity, this conversation. But that's one example of how my power in this seat has been explicit about how it has to show up for our people on the west and south sides.
And Mayor, I know you're busy. I'm just trying to get two more questions in real quick, just real fast. I have to mention, migrants. Anytime I'm out in the street, anytime I'm talking to people, the first thing they say is that, the mayor is doing more for the migrants than he's doing for us meaning Black people. And I know migrants started coming to Chicago during Lightfoot's administration. Can you talk a little bit about how much money did your administration spend on migrants? And I don't want you to compare it to like how much money Black people have received, but can you talk about why it's important that you handled the situation the way that you did?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let's start with just the crisis, the mission, right? When I came into office, these individuals were sleeping on floors in police districts and outside on the ground. Prior to me arriving, the state were putting these individuals in hotels, and the state pulled that money. And as buses continued to come, they just started dropping them off on police stations.
And the buses came from Texas.
Buses coming from Texas, right? It's not like I ordered them. It's not like I sent for the buses. The buses were already coming, and there was no plan. There was, at the state level, the county level, the city level, there was no plan. And within the first 20 minutes in office, I had to come up with a plan to respond to a crisis that I inherited. And what I will say is this, that I did make a moral decision to make sure that human beings were not sleeping on floors. That had I not managed this crisis, you know what they would have said about me? That the brother can't handle a crisis. Not only did we manage it, but we actually built a one system initiative out of this, where now we have city-ran shelters, where we actually have beds available for unhoused Chicagoans. In fact, when people call 311 seeking shelter, there's not a single family that's on the waiting list right now. We built that system out of a crisis. And here's the thing. We came up with this bus ordinance to stop the buses essentially from coming unannounced. No one else in America had a plan for that. I came up with that. The amount of money that was spent, it was 1% of the overall city's budget. 1%. We have spent 20 times that amount on our people. The reason why I believe that our people were frustrated about this mission is because that's the only thing that they were fed. And it was an intentional effort from mass media to make our people believe that the only thing that I was doing every single day was responding to this mission. They didn't want to talk about youth employment. They didn't want to talk about paid time off, the largest paid time off ordinance in any major city in the country where workers have 10 days off. We abolished the sub-minimum wage, mostly brown and Black women who are in these positions. Again, building more affordable homes. Oh, by the way, violence is down again already this year, 20%, 37% in the month of February. Homicides, shootings, shooting victims, robberies, carjackings, all of that is down. More investment in housing, in youth employment, and workforce. Our people did not get the benefit of knowing what I was doing for our people. And that does anger me because it was intentional. But the good news is it didn't break us. We are a welcoming city. We are attached to the history of Mayor Harold Washington and his corporate counsel, Brother Attorney Montgomery, who understood that giving free rein to law enforcement to do anything that it pleased was dangerous, particularly to our people. And so I'm in a position now to continue to showcase how we show up for working people and particularly our families. And again, 1% of the city's budget. We've spent 20 times that amount on housing, youth employment, workforce, our schools. And our people deserve an opportunity to have that story told to them. And I'm looking forward to these next 806 days or so that's left in this first term. And yes, I do keep account because our people's livelihood rests on our ability to be able to invest in them. And that's what I said I was going to do. And that's what I'm doing.
And you bring us to the point, you're getting ready to go to D.C.
Yeah.
I wish you were going on happier terms, but you're going to defend Chicago's sanctuary city status in front of Republicans at a congressional hearing. There are organizers who are getting together this weekend and encourage people to get together this weekend to affirm you and to send you off as you get ready to go to D.C. What does that support mean to you? Have you talked to some of those organizers who are coordinating this effort?
I have spoken to some of those organizers. These are organizers that I organized with before I was, in elected office. And it's quite comforting to know that our people understand the connection between our people groups, that we cannot allow white supremacy to divide black and brown people. The same colonizers that captured our people and put us in chains and enslaved us were the same colonizers that robbed land from indigenous people. Our strength as black folks, and this is about black folks in the entire diaspora. That's why I celebrate Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, a black Haitian immigrant, his love for a Potawatomi woman and establishing this city and this trade post here as the global capital of the world. And to be a black first family with that legacy that immigrants, descendants of slaves, built this city. I'm going to defend working people. That's the part that I'm encouraged by, that the government, Donald Trump's government, is an attack on the evolution of our democracy. And that his effort is to get us to surrender our humanity. And as a black man, I am not going to surrender to white supremacy. It is my cultural and godly responsibility and duty in this moment to stand up on behalf of marginalized people and not succumb to the wickedness as I've described. His administration is the tempter at the end of a 40-day fast. I am more confident now that the other side of this struggle, there's a land that we can build where we can make sure that there's milk, and for the new black, almond milk and oat milk, black folks,
The new black.
right, rice milk and stuff. We don't even drink vitamin D anymore, milk and honey, right? And that milk and honey is attached to good paying jobs, access to healthcare, a great education system, a city that is safe. We're building a better, stronger, safer Chicago through the lens of the soul of Chicago. And that's what I'm going to represent and defend on Wednesday.
Well, Mayor, we wish you luck, and thank you again for your time, and have safe travels.
Thank you. Thank you.